So hello, everyone. My name is Stacy Miles, and I am a customer success manager here at Lien Law, and I am going to be guiding you through the Lien Align billing workflow process. So welcome. I'm excited to walk you through this, and we're going to have some fun today. I am joined today by my MC, Jay Sanchez. He is the leader of our support and success team. And I'm also joined by Stephanie Watanabe. Did I get it right?
You
Yes.
sure did.
Excellent. Stephanie is my partner in crime over with Confido Legal. So as we start looking into payment processing through Lien Law, as those specific questions come up, she will be more than happy to help make sure that we have that information out there.
I'm laughing because you said partner in crime, and I'm sure all the defense attorneys, anybody who works with criminal law, just immediately perked up. What?
Made a little note, just a little note. All right, so today I want to give you a quick update of what our agenda is going to look like. There will be time for questions both during the course of the webinar and at the end. So to begin, we're going to go into Lien Law and look at your global settings and kind of see what are the things that can be customized and how can they be customized, and are you set up to really get the most out of this process. After that, we're going to jump over to our billings side, where we're going to see what does it actually look like to reach out to a customer using these particular processes. And then from the client's perspective, we're going to look at what that email looks like. After that, we're going to see what does that payment flow really feel like, both from your perspective and from the client's perspective. And then we're going to wrap it up with a final Confido legal and QuickBooks reconciliation. Now, after each of these individual pieces, there will be time for questions. There is a Q&A chat that Jay and Stephanie are going to be watching. And as we hit the end of each individual agenda, they will let me know, hey, here are some of the questions that we got. So let's go ahead and get started. I am going to share my screen, maybe. How do you do that? Question. Share. You hit the big share button is the answer, everyone. I found it. Okay. Can we see the screen? Perfect. All right, so this is something that everyone is familiar with. We're in our billings page in Lien Law, but we are going to start with settings. To get to the settings menu, you're going to click on the little gear on the top right. After that, the first thing we're going to look at is we are going to look to make sure that your firm is set up to process payments through the Lien Align process. So that's going to be all the way down at the bottom under integrations, and we're going to look at Confido Legal. Now, very quickly, you probably saw a flash of what this page might look like if you do not have an account set up or you're not currently logged in. And so that's a really good at-a-glance way to tell I'm set up, or I actually have to put in an application real quick if I want to put this process through. I will say that after we're done, if you're really excited and you want to start this process, put that application in as quickly as you can, because the application can take a couple of days before you get that process started. This is what it looks like when everything is ready to go. You see that green, you have your check marks. A lot of this is customizable, things you can turn on and turn off, and we will get to that as we get later on in the webinar. Now, the next setting we're going to look at is called Invoice Email or Email Settings. We actually have a couple of things in testing right now that'll give you the opportunity to create your own invoice within Lien Law, and it's very closely tied to the Lien Align process. And so it sort of lives in the same place. If you see a little new banner right here, that's where you want to be. If you have any questions about setting up your own custom invoice through Lien Law, let our support team know, because we're more than happy to turn that feature on and walk you through it. You can reach out to support@mylienlaw.com, or you can always click our handy little chat tool right here. Okay, so here's the good stuff. This is what does your email to your client look like? So you'll see that there are a couple of different options across the top. We're going to start with invoice email. Invoice email is the template that you're building when you are letting a customer know that they have an invoice available. To start, you want to put in your firm name as the sender. What that's going to do is that's going to tell your client that they have received an email from your firm. The email address is going to be lienlaw or payments@mylienlaw.io. I'm going to have to double check it. But the actual from field is going to be filled in with your firm name. That's going to give your client the assurance that they're getting an email from a trusted source. The email sender, now this is Melissa. She is my firm partner, and anytime a client wants to reply to the email, she wants that email to go to her. And so that's why she's set up here as the email sender. On the right, we have our recipient info, and that includes a carbon copy and a blind carbon copy. So you can enter in any information here for people who need to be in the know. Many of our clients actually have a billing address here. So if you have an entire billing team, they will get CC'd on these emails, meaning they will have a copy of the email and the invoice PDF that was attached to that email. They'll be able to see what the client sees. The next thing is our subject line. The subject line has a little bit of play. You can put in what makes the most sense to you, to your firm's brand, to how you want the client to see the information at a glance. So a lot of this can be essentially updated based on what's in these brackets. So the individual invoice number, the individual client name, the individual due date, all of that will automatically update with the information specific to that client and that invoice. You can also customize your subject line, and it will give you different options that will allow you to enter these little brackets and say, I want the invoice number, I want their name, and I want their due date in the subject line, and you can build that out. Under that, we've got the logo. It's important for your brand that your logo is present on the email, on the invoice, anywhere your client can see it so that they know that this is a trusted source and they can have that respect for your brand. So you click into here and then you can upload any existing logo that you have in your library. You want it no more than 500 pixels wide and 374 pixels tall. And then that will fit in a good way that looks pretty on the email. After that, you have the body of the email. And again, you're seeing those brackets in here because you can customize this based on what you want that to say. We actually have firms that customize this email message every month. They use it almost like a newsletter, letting their client know, hey, we've got a new partner, or we've made some changes to some of our processes. And so you can always adjust that very easily, again, by clicking that little pencil icon.
Another suggestion that I want to add on here is with that email, you have maybe you have a client that they want to pay a very specific way, and they only want to pay in a very specific way in a certain specific cadence. They only want certain things to be done in a very specific way. You can include those instructions on here and set it up as as a template for that client, or if you wanted to, again, just kind of adjust it as you go. You can do all of that, and Stacey will continue walking through on how you can do it the moment you're sending out the email.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of individualized options. So what we're looking at right now is the global setting. When you go to email a client, this is the body of the email that's going to pop in there. As we get further into the process, I'll show you how to put information into an email that's specific to that client. Now, by default, the payment buttons are black but you can change that. You can use your hex color. You can go into your greens and say, I want it to be that pretty Lien Law green, and that's going to be the new color of your invoice buttons. And then you've got the account summary. This is going to give you just a little preview of what an account summary might look like. Now you might be asking, what do you mean by account summary? There's an account summary on the invoice itself. That is true, but you can actually turn this little toggle on right here at the top. And what that little toggle is going to do is it's actually going to put the account summary in the body of the email. This is going to be huge for your clients because they're not going to have to download the invoice to see how much is due. A lot of our customers have shared that when they have the account balance in the email and a payment link, the client gets the email. It's from the trusted source. They see this is the amount that's due. They see a payment link and they say, all right, while I'm here, click, done. And so it really helps improve the efficiency of collecting those payments and reduces the amount of time that your clients are sending downloading attachments. You do also have a few more options that you can include. For example, if you have an expense that you incurred on behalf of the client and you want to include an attachment, you can do that. So if the expense is entered either in Lien Law or QuickBooks and has an attachment like a receipt, it will automatically include that as an attachment on the email. You also have the option to choose, do I want to send invoice payment links, the full balance payment links, or both? For contingency cases, do I want to send neither? The cool thing about the full balance payment link is if you have a client with multiple invoices, that one link is going to take care of all of those invoices. That's really important for clients who are maybe struggling with that inertia. They get 3 different invoices. They have to click to make that payment 3 different times, right? And so when you have that full balance payment link, they only have to do it once. Makes collecting that payment much easier. Excellent. All right, we're going to go over reminders and then trust requests, and then I'll pause for questions. So reminders, let's say you have a client and they are past due. They haven't made their payment. This is an option for you that will allow you to send them a separate email with a gentle reminder that we are still waiting on your payment. We want to continue to provide legal services to you, but we haven't received your payment yet. And then finally, we have our trust requests. So let's take a look at what it actually looks like when you change the body of this email. I'm going to go ahead and you'll see that you can just type in a message here. You can say, hello, and then you can type in client _ name. So you can type it in. That's totally fine. If you don't necessarily want to figure out, like spend the time typing this out, you can click that and it copies it onto your clipboard and you can Control V or right click paste and it'll pop right in. I'm going to cheat a little and put in one that I already pre-wrote out. So I have, dear client first name, I hope this message finds you well. To ensure we can continue providing you with the highest level of legal services, we kindly suggest that you make a payment into your trust account. I'm going to include the total amount of the trust due, and I'm going to sign it with my name. And then I will hit save. And now that is what the trust request is going to look like. The information across the top, including the firm name, the email sender, the CC, and the BCC, all of that is locked in under this invoice email. So any change you make here is going to waterfall flow into the other email templates. All right, I think this is a good point to stop and pause. Do we have any questions so far?
So if I create a trust request, can I use the trust request if I just want to get that initial retainer from the client?
It's a great question. Let's take a look.
And this question comes from David Bird.
Hi, David. Go ahead and give it a refresh because I've been putting her through her paces today. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and do a trust request. And let's say it's a client that doesn't have a trust. And you'll see that Lien Law is giving you a message. It is telling you, this is the first trust activity for this matter. We will create the necessary account as a trust liability account. So when you send the trust request, it's going to have the information we put in. You'll see that the client's first name was inputted because that was what was in the bracket. You'll see that as I update this, I want $100 from this client. You'll see the deposit amount updates to 100. If I change that to 1,000, updates to 1,000. And so anything you put in here is going to pop into here. I'm the responsible attorney. So best regards from your pal, Stacy. And when I send this to a client for the first time, it's actually going to create a trust liability account in QuickBooks for you.
So to summarize, David, yeah, you can absolutely use the trust request to get an initial retainer payment. Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
What other
So
questions?
these were the global settings. I'm curious if these are the global settings. I don't see that we have any additional questions. But if we have global settings, how does it work individually? What if I want to switch that up?
That's a great question. All right, let's go into manage invoices. So I have a couple of clients here that I have invoices ready to go for. I've created them, pushed them through, and we'll see that I have Miles Stationery Boutique. We've got our washi tape design issue going on where we're representing them. I have 2 invoices for them. I also have Evelyn Gray. I'm representing her in her divorce. And then I have biomalware here, and they're always linked. So let's start with Evelyn. Evelyn has an invoice of $975, and I want to make sure that she knows that she is able to pay a full or partial payment for this invoice by clicking the link below. From here, you can also change the 2. So let's say Evelyn reached out to me and says, hey, my email address isn't Stacy plus demo anymore. It's Stacy plus sample. You can make that change here. Also, Melissa is out of the office this week. She's taking a well-deserved break. She doesn't need to be flooded with these emails, so I'm just going to take her right out. So all of that can be adjusted. I can also send a copy to myself. This makes a lot more sense when I'm not the CC, but if you're not the CC and you want to send a copy to yourself, you can absolutely do that. The subject line can be adjusted. As we discussed, the body can be adjusted. You can preview and send a test email here if you just want to test it out, make sure it works and it looks exactly the way you want it to. And then finally, this client only has the 1 invoice. She doesn't need a full balance payment link. So I'm just only going to send the invoice payment link. And then I'm going to click send. Now for the stationery boutique, we'll notice that I actually have 2 invoices for this particular client. So I'm going to check on both. I'm going to click deliver and I'm going to click email. The only thing you'll see that's different is addresses have moved to the CC because you can only have 1 email address. Now this is the same client, but it's sending 2 emails. It's sending both the invoice number 1 and invoice number 2. And we want only the full balance payment link because we have multiple invoices out to this particular customer. Go ahead and hit send there. Excellent. And then we have Biomalware Inc. right here. You'll notice that we have a due date of 7/2 and it's 8/14, right? And so this client is always late. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to come over here into track sent emails. Have I emailed them already? Do they have their invoice? If they don't have their invoice, maybe that's the problem. But then you see, yep, They've got their invoice. I sent it out already. So I'm going to go ahead and click the check button, send a reminder. Boop. While we're here, we're going to track these emails. So when you email a client, you will be able to track if they've received it, if they've clicked on it, and you're able to do that for everyone on the email. So for example, right here, I emailed this to myself, to Melissa, and to my client. I can see that I've opened this email. I can see that it has been delivered to the other recipients. As we go down, you'll be able to see, for example, this one, clicked on it. So if you have a client who said, I never got your email, you're able to come in here and say, well, it looks like you clicked on it on 10/25. Do you want to check again? Or I can send it to you again. So you're able to fact check that on your end. Some of our clients also wonder, how do I track what I sent, an invoice or a trust request? So that's going to be this column right here. And this column tells you what exactly are you tracking. For this client, I sent an invoice. For this client, I sent a trust request.
I'm curious, what about that one that says invoice plus 15 more? What else did you send there?
Oh, I sent an invoice, a reminder, an invoice, a reminder, a reminder, a reminder. So every time you send the client a reminder, that is going to be notated here. It's going to be dated. And so you're going to be able to see specifically, when did you click on it? When did you open it? And when was it delivered? You're probably not going to see 15 of those. This is a test environment where we like to test things out. Okay, so here's what it looks like from the billing perspective. We've sent a couple of emails out to our clients. We've had some where we have asked them for the full balance. We've had some where we've asked only for the invoice amount, and we've sent a payment reminder to another. I'm going to pause here. What kind of questions are we seeing now?
Well, we had one from Lee Allman. I just double checking on it. Is it possible to not have the send copy to myself button checked as a default?
Not yet, but it's a good idea. Our product team is aware we've gotten that request before, and so I will follow up with you, send you a quick email afterwards, letting you know where we're at with that. But right now, it's currently being prioritized.
And another thing to consider is you can email in bulk. So if you have, like Stacey showed, if you have multiple invoices that you need to send for the same client, or even for different ones, you can just invoice them, send the email in bulk and just uncheck it so that you don't have that option checked for all those ones.
Absolutely.
Now, curious, where does Confido come in here? Maybe talk what is Confido? What does it mean when, this is how we send the emails? What next?
It's a great question. So next, let's take a look at what does the client see? So here we're seeing the invoices that I sent out during our time together. So we've got, this is for Evelyn. We have $975 due. She only has the one invoice. And we're seeing that we've told her, hey, here's the invoice amount. Here's when it's due. Here's the invoice number. Here's the attachment and the total amount due right here. Now, Evelyn at this point can certainly open the invoice. She can download it and review it as normal, or she can say, I got this email from the law firm that I am working with. I can tell because of the 2 and because of the logo. I know that I have a bill that is due, $975. Sounds about right. I can just go ahead and click pay. All right. Now from here, your client has a couple of options. They can pay with a debit or a credit card, or they can do a same-day bank transfer, which works a little bit like an ACH. It's just a little bit faster. They also have the option to pay the total amount due, or like we said in our email right here, you can make a full or partial payment. So if our client only wants to pay $500, they can pay only $500. We'll have this particular client pay with a credit card, and I'm gonna cheat. And we're gonna use some not real information here. And we're gonna put it in the right spot is what we're gonna do.
While you're entering that information, I have an interesting story here as to where Confido ties into all of this process. I have had to hire attorneys in the past just for personal situations, And I remember once I had a consultation, it was a $400 payment that I had to make, and I had to do it through Cash App. Suffice to say that I never went to that attorney again. It just didn't feel trusted. Like Cash App, isn't that the thing that I have with a background in fraud? I've seen so many fraudulent transactions come through Cash App, and I was like, how professional really are you if that's what you're using?
Yeah.
So it's great to have this as an option where you can put your branding on there. And I promise you, if I had seen like their logo there and seen this is what you need to pay and why we're charging you that, oh my God, that would have cleared up so much more. And I would have avoided having to go through 3 other attorneys to find out what happened.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so we have our payment is complete. Now you'll notice this payment includes a $15 surcharge fee. So what that fee is, that is the credit card fee. And our payment processing partner offers the option to pass that fee onto your client in most states. And so what that means is when it comes to credit card payments, any fee is actually going to be covered by the client when you have that set up that way. Now, there are fees for that same day bank transaction. The fee for that transaction is 1% up to $30. So it's capped at $30. We do have firms that give clients the option to pay with a credit card, or they can wire money, right? And alternatively, they can do a debit card payment, but debit card payment surcharges cannot be passed on to your client. Okay, so we have successfully paid $515 to the firm. So that surcharge is paid to the firm. In addition to that, as the client, I get a receipt. And so I'm able to confirm, yes, I made my payment. I made it on this day. This is how much I paid. And I come back to my lien law and give it a refresh. You will see that lien law has automatically updated based on what the client paid. So the client made a partial payment of $500 and their total amount due went from $975 to $475. That also updated in QuickBooks. And so that means that the manual payment, I received this payment from this client, this payment from this client, this payment from this client. You might have pages of bills to go through under manage invoicing. And if they make their payment through Confido Legal, you do not have to manually record those payments. It automatically gets done for you.
I'm curious to hear, and maybe we can hear from the attendees there as well. How many hours are you spending? Or, you might say it's only 3 minutes to subtract that payment. But if you have 130 something invoices to send out, those 3 minutes add up. So how much time are you spending having to go in, find where the payment lives, make sure that it's attached to the right invoice. Then from there, making sure that it's recorded in lien law, double checking QuickBooks, confirm the bank transfer, finish the reconciliation. And that's assuming you don't have to send a reminder for the payment.
I'm curious to see what the responses are.
I know for sure that I've just in reconciliation alone, this is something that saves hours and hours. And what was it? The average amount of time is at least 3 to 5 minutes. Heidi, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, Heidi or Jidi, says hours. How many hours? Wow. And then just think of something that just really resonates with me as someone who has been on the other end being a client is my experience where like imagine that I make a payment and then you can't find it because you haven't reconciled the account yet. It hasn't been marked as paid. So I'm sending all these payments. I don't know the financial transparency that I'm having with the firm. I lose my trust. And I don't want to work with that firm anymore because they can't tell me what exactly do I owe. And if they do, it takes them days to get back to me because they themselves have to reorganize what they're doing.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
this process just makes it so much simpler so you can focus on that human aspect.
Yes, that's the idea. So let's go
We
ahead, and here we have Georgia. Georgia actually has 2 invoices. Each of them are 400, and you'll notice that our amount due is 800. We have a balance forward, a new charges, and so Georgia can see, oh, this is both of my invoices. Okay, I'm gonna pay the balance. And now, instead of having to click on a link for each invoice, Georgia can just come in here and make that payment. And it's going to process a payment. It's going to apply to each individual invoice, and you're not going to have to manually record those payments. And then here's our biomalware. They're always late. So we are reaching out to remind you of the outstanding invoice. Here's your invoice number. Here's when it was due. Please check your retainer summary, your account balance, and make your payment. All right. Go ahead and give that a refresh. Excellent. We will see that the Miles Stationery Boutique is no longer there. We will take a look at our track sent emails, and we will see Miles Stationery. She is not there. So let's go into our paid. And here's where you'll see this has been paid. And so you have constant, up-to-date, as needed visibility into, did they get my email? Did they click on my email? Did they make their payment? All right, here's another good pause point.
Perfect. We got a few questions on here. So
Perfect.
first, Gloria Barnes is asking, is there a way to send multiple invoices in one email? Specifically, we're talking about different matters, but the same client. And I'm going to make the assumption here, Gloria, that you're using matter level accounting, so you have to do one invoice per matter.
It's a great question, Gloria. And again, that's something that our product team has received as a feature request. Currently, it is one invoice per email. As an example, when we emailed Georgia today, she had 2 invoices. We were able to email both of them with one click by highlighting the 2 invoices and clicking email, but Georgia did receive 2 emails. That is feedback that we've received, and our product team is working on prioritizing that amongst their other work. It's a great question.
One more question from Kim asking, does the client have to pay a fee no matter how they pay?
Great question. That is entirely up to you. So the only time the client would be responsible for a fee is if you turn on that setting in Confido and say, I want to pass these charges on to my client. As a reminder, that is only available for credit card payments. And those credit card payments can be used to make the invoice payment or the trust request payment. They can make their trust request payments with a credit card, and you can set it up where they pay that surcharging fee. But if you say, I don't want my client to pay it, I'll cover it, that's a setting within Confido that you can turn on and off.
I'm curious also about the ability to make those payments, as you have, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a lot of, if it's B2C, for example, you have the single people that are hiring an attorney for whatever their needs are. They might be more inclined to pay with a debit or credit card. But let's say that I'm handling a lot of corporate clients, and they don't really have a credit card, or if they do, it's like an American Express. How does those how do the fees change there?
That's
Or
a
do
really
they?
good question. The first thing that I want to reassure you of is there's actually a lot of corporations that have a company credit card that actually want to use their credit card for these sort of things because they can get cash back at the end of the year and reinvest it into their business. And so I wouldn't necessarily count those types of clients out for this process. Additionally, Confido Legal does take payment from American Express. I have Stephanie here to fact check me and she'll make faces if I'm wrong, but we do take American Express as a payment type. And so if your client is a corporate client, they use American Express because of the protections and the limits that they offer, they can certainly follow this process. I don't think it changes anything when it comes to surcharging. Can I get a yes and no? It changes things, it doesn't change things.
No, it doesn't change things, Stacy. Really the limiting factor on surcharging is the state, if there's a state prohibition against it. And like you had mentioned before about debit cards. A lot of people do have questions about American Express pricing because they're known to be a little bit more expensive. But with Confido Legal, we actually have flat rate pricing that stays the same regardless of any card type.
Perfect.
And I'm curious, Stephanie, on that note, for if I'm in a state, like, how do I know that I'm in a state that can't pass on the surcharging? Like, do I have to look that up before applying to Confido?
We have a guide on our website, confidolegal.com, and it's actually one of our more popular guides, so you can look up your state specifically.
And does that change depending on the location? So say if I have a firm that has an office in Texas and another in California, is that taken in consideration?
It would really depend on which business location we're processing payments for. So when you apply, we do ask for your office address, and then that's what would determine if you're in the state that allows it or not allows it.
Yeah, so you'd want your home office to be that address on the application, and then your secondary office would follow that process.
Understood. We have one more question from Lee Allman saying, are you working with Confido to be able to have debit card on and credit card off? It is my understanding you have to have both or neither.
You can have, so that's a really good segue. Thank you, Lee. Let's take a look. I think I closed the wrong one. Let's take a look at your Confido global settings. In a minute, it's thinking about it. There we go. All right. So if we go into our global settings, we have firm settings where you can choose, I want to take credit cards. I don't want to take debit cards. And so you can turn that off on a global scale. Now, if you are perhaps a smaller firm, right, and you have the ability to look into each payment link individually and say, you know what, for some clients, I want to be able to offer them the option to pay with the debit card. You can come into your payments tab in Confido, and you can click the little plus sign. And from there, you can adjust the existing link to only accept what you want it to accept.
And to highlight there, if you want to take credit, debit, and bank transfers, which would be ACH, but you don't want one specific client to take debit card, like you don't want them to use the debit card, you would have to you would have to go in and adjust the payment link after it's been created. So that's just a note that you'll have to make sure your global settings are aligned with what you generally want. And you can disable individually from there, but you can't enable individually.
Does that make sense, Lee?
Yes.
Perfect. Excellent. While we're here, Let's take a look at branding. So in Confido Legal, you can change the colors. You can add an image like your logo, and you can really adjust how this payment screen looks to match your brand. At Lien Law, we really want to make sure that our Lien Law green is everywhere. Let's make this really, really glaringly Lien Law. As glaringly Lien Law as we possibly can.
This is where a graphic designer, my art brain is just everything's on fire.
Look, it's all green. This is definitely Lien Law. Isn't it pretty? I made this, everyone. This is my art. You can adjust bank accounts. So you have your trust account, you have your default operating account, you have your operating account. You can have multiple accounts depending on what type of payment you're accepting from your client. And so what that means is when you send a trust request to a client and they make their payment, that payment is automatically going to route to the trust bank account. In addition to that, QuickBooks automatically going to update your liability and trust account balances based on that payment that was made. All right. So in Confido, what you're seeing right now is we've been making a lot of payments, right? Here's Evelyn. She has her partial payment where you can see she paid 500. She still has 475 due. We can see that washi tape design matter for Miles Stationery Boutique has been paid in full. And we can see that biomalware right here is always late, right? So we can always see at a glance what is the status of our existing payment links. Now let's say, no, I need more time, QuickBooks. Let's say you are ready to do your reconciliation and you want to make sure that the information, the deposits in your bank account are matching the deposits in your QuickBooks. And that's a little bit weird, you might be thinking, because what about those fees, right? What about those surcharge fees? How is that going to affect what my reconciliation looks like? Because my bank account and my QuickBooks aren't necessarily going to match. That's okay. Confido is going to give you visibility into what was paid by whom and when. And so if we come over here into our QuickBooks, we're going to go into New Bank Deposit. There we go. And we can see here are the payments that have been made. So when we start, we've got Evelyn. Evelyn paid 500, but did she? So let's take a look. Pop this open. And you'll be able to see Evelyn made a $500 payment with a $15 surcharge. And so it breaks it down by client, by payment, by matter, and you'll be able to see this is what I've gotten today. So if we take this, we can go ahead, received from Gravity Legal. So Confido Legal recently changed their name. They used to be Gravity Legal. We want the account to go into our operating account. Payment method, Gravity. The amount, 15. We're gonna check on Evelyn. We have that. We're gonna save it. And now the amount is gonna match. And you go through that for each individual process and you adjust this so that it matches the amount. Zoom does this thing where this little window comes down and hides all of my tabs. There we go. And you're going to be able to add together all of these fees and put it all together into this one add funds to this deposit. And that's going to make sure that the number that's added in your QuickBooks matches the amount that is deposited in your bank. This is important because if you receive 3 individual payments through Confido Legal of $500 each, your bank account is going to show that you have a deposit of $1,545. right? And so to branch that out within QuickBooks and show QuickBooks 1,545 instead of 1,500, this is how you fold those fees in. Okay. What questions do we have?
One that I'm not sure if we were clear, but just want to double check on it. David Bird asks, how do you enter a single check that was received that pays multiple invoices?
That's a really good question. And that process within lien law does not change. So just because you're sending your client a payment link does not mean that your client is tied to that payment link. They can send you a check, right? They can come in and give you cash. They can put something in the mail if they really want to. Y'all, it takes so long for you to get your checks in the mail. Huh. So they can put that in the mail and you can come in and say, you know what? I met with Evelyn, and you can record a payment. Now, let's say you do have multiple, let's see if I can find one that has, there we go. Hey, Raj. You can go ahead there, record a payment. I received a check and it's for the total amount, and that will automatically mark them all as paid. Does that answer your question, David?
And I think more specifically, if let's say that the client made a payment through the payment link from Confido, how do we know? Like, will it mark the full every invoice as paid if they choose to pay the full balance due instead of just that specific invoice?
That's a really good question. If they used the full balance payment link, then yes. So if we come into our manage invoices and I only want to see what's been paid. There we go. And we'll see the different invoices. A little bit tough to see from here. Matters involving Stacy. I think we can clean it up a little bit. There we go. So we have our stationery boutique right here. 1175 was paid and 1144. All of it marked as paid as soon as they used that full balance payment link.
So essentially, the answer to your question, David, is if they're using the full, paying the full balance link, it's going to apply it to all the invoices that are due. And again, you still won't have to go in and mark them individually as paid. They will be marked as paid according to their balance, and you'll be set from there.
Yes, and it's marked as paid both in lien law and in QuickBooks. It pops up under bank deposit because the invoice has been marked as paid within QuickBooks. I didn't come in and do that. The client made their payment and it automatically got done. This is a point where I want to share a story that I actually heard from one of our customers who is actively using the Lien Align process, specifically that all of these features together, the email, customizable to be able to put in any firm announcements regularly, the account summary in the body of the email so the client doesn't have to download the invoice, the full balance payment link so that the client doesn't suffer from that inertia of, I just paid one invoice, I have 2 more to go. All of that together actually ended up saving them dozens of hours every month. And so that means that the responsible attorneys could focus more on practicing law, bringing in new clients. Their accounting and administrative team were able to really think through the collections process from a human perspective, as opposed to a transactional one. That means that because so much of this was automated, they didn't have to answer as many questions from their clients. They were able to come together to create a collections process within the firm that was able to connect with their client while they're going through something that's difficult. Let's all be honest here, right? None of us want to get into a situation that we require a lawyer, and having that human connection that we know you need help and we want to help you, we need to get these invoices paid, being able to have the time to come up with a strategy that helps you have that connection and get that payments collected in an empathetic and thoughtful way, resulted in them as the top billing and collecting law firm in their state. It's huge.
And
Think
that's a
about what you can
challenge.
do with that time.
Yeah. And that's a challenge just across the board. Like imagine if you had at least 12 hours, was it a month, a week at least? What would you do with that time? What could you do with that time if you didn't have to spend it marking each and hunting down payments, marking invoices as paid? That adds up.
Yeah. Biomalware is always late. What can we do about that? How can we take care of that? We already know we can send them an email with 2 clicks. Maybe I have time now because I don't have to send reminder emails to 30 clients and have it take a dozen hours. Maybe I can start calling people and probing into what's going on, seeing if we can put together a payment plan. Will we accept a partial payment? Seeing if there are different options available, and really connecting with your clients in a different, less transactional way.
Absolutely. All right, we got a little under 6 minutes left. Any other questions? Seeing the chat's blank right now.
Give it another moment. Well,
All right.
great thing is that if you do have questions after this, our support team is available to answer. So that's at support@mylienlaw.com. You can also click on the chat bubble in your Lien Law account. On top of that, we're going to be sending a follow-up email so that you have a copy of the recording of our webinar today. And we're going to include a link where if you want some one-on-one time with me and you want a one-on-one demo, you can click on that link and we can schedule some time together. So lots of different ways if questions come up after we're done that we can make sure that you're taken care of.
And as questions do come up in the chat, David, I believe we actually have that in the webinar as well. So we'll send you the recording afterwards so that if there is anything that pops into your head or anything like that, you can go back, watch it, see if it's already been answered. And if it hasn't, again, Stacy's here. Inundate her calendar.
Awesome. Well, if any of our attendees don't have any questions, you can feel free to drop off. I'm going to hang out until the end of our time here. So for another 4 minutes. So if anybody wants to hang back and have a couple more questions, that's totally fine too. But thank you so much. This is my first webinar and you all made it so special. So thank you for joining.
Fantastic. All right, and then I'm just making a note for David. We'll send him some more info on if he doesn't add the surcharge. How does that accounting work?
Got it. Absolutely.
Question there. All right, awesome.
Well, I suppose since we have 3 minutes, we could discuss that. So
I mean, I'm open to it.
So let's say you do not have surcharging turned on, or let's say you live in a state where surcharging isn't possible, right? From there, that charge will come out of your operating account. I believe about halfway through the month is when the statements come out or when the payments get processed. How much control does a firm have over when those payment fees are deducted, Stephanie?
Unfortunately, those are automated fees, which usually occur on the 1st or 2nd of each month for credit card and debit card payments. And then we assess the ACH fees towards the middle of the month for the previous month. So there's not a lot of wiggle room or control there, unfortunately.
Got it. So again, the charge, if it's a debit or a credit card, and if it's a credit card with surcharging turned off, the fee per transaction is 2.95% of that transaction. If it's a same day bank transfer, which again works a lot like an ACH, but is just a little bit faster, those are 1% per transaction with a cap of 30.
And essentially, David, if you don't pass on the surcharge to your clients, assuming you're in a state that could pass it on, if you end up not passing it on, that is an expense that you would have to pay. Now, the good news is that as opposed to a lot of solutions out there where you pay a monthly cost of, accepting credit card and debit card, you're with Confido Legal and Lien Align, you're paying for the transaction itself. There is no additional monthly subscription fee. You're just paying what the surcharge is.
Yes, there's no fee specifically to have an account. It's a processing fee for the payment itself. And so, for example, if you have a month where you're working really hard on one contingency case, a contingency case isn't going to pay with a credit card or a same day transaction at all. It's all going to come out of whatever the winnings are. You're not going to make a payment to Confido that month.
Hope that answers your question. I think we're at time now.
Excellent. Well, thank you again so much for joining. I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of your week, and be on the lookout for that email. If you need any additional one-on-one support, I am here for you.
So, thank you for being here, everyone, and thank you, Stephanie, for joining. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.